Welcome to Sanibel and Captiva's original podcast, The Insider's Guide to the Islands. I'll be chatting with island experts from fishing guides to shellers to local personalities. I aim to get the insider information to make your island experience incredible. Today I have the good fortune to have Toni Westland, the supervisory Refuge Ranger at the J.N. Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge. No wonder I had to read it. And Birgie Miller, the Executive Director of Ding Darling Wildlife Society Friends of the Refuge. Ladies, welcome. So excited to have you on the podcast.
Hey, we're excited.
Thanks for asking us.
Could you just explain the different sides of the coin that you represent for Ding Darling?
So the Friends of the Refuge is just that. We're the Friends of the Refuge. So oftentimes the refuge receives government funding and they never get enough. So we work to help them fill in those gaps by raising money to build and design new cool exhibits that people can come and visit and experience. We help with the internships and scholarships and anything the refuge needs additional support for, we help with.
Perfect.
And then I am your federal tax dollars at work. Actually, I am. So I'm a federal employee of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We're under the Department of Interior. So I have the best job in the world. And it's really easy to have the best job in the world when you have an amazing friends group that supports you. So I get to do my passion with my degree is actually environmental education and talking to visitors and educating them and at such a beautiful place. And then we have this great support from generous people and donors. And so it's amazing. It's a great partnership. So we're so glad to be here to
So
talk
we can
to you.
offer great things for people who come to visit.
Right, perfect. And then I understand you've expanded the employees, is that right, of the...
Yeah, so the society, again, its funding falls short. We have thousands of kids that come by school bus that want to experience the refuge for the first time, some of whom have never even seen the Gulf of Mexico, yet live across the bridge.
Right.
And so they come, but the educator position was frozen by the government, and so the Friends group came into play to say, Toni, do you need an educator that we can support? So Toni said yes.
Yeah, I actually started out as that educator my first 8 years here. So
Oh, you did?
Every day out with school kids and going to schools. And it's a really important part that we preach a lot, which is, capturing the kids when they're little. And they end up teaching their parents something new when they get home from their field trips. And then they grow up to be stewards and they come out and enjoy Ding Darling or so many other wonderful public lands.
Right.
So I started out in that position, and it was really, really hard to see, our federal budget, when people do leave, the positions are frozen, they disappear. And so in my time at Ding Darling, it's gone from 22 staff members down to 11.
Wow.
It's gone from 6 rangers out being able to interact with the public and run volunteers and do all of that down to 2.5.
Wow.
So that's the reality of what's happening. And so that's why it's so important to have someone strong like Birgie at the front of an organization like this that then captures people that we can't. I can't do the ask.
Right, right.
She can.
Right.
And they're passionate. They come and have experiences and they want to give back. They don't know how to do it, but they can. And so that's where she steps in.
And so now as a result, with that educator, they get thousands of kids. They get nearly 1 million visitors every year to the refuge. And we want that experience to be good. It's like Toni said, she's passionate about the refuge and the conservation and saving and protecting wildlife. And that's the best way to do it is by people who come and visit, whether they're kids or adults and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, so we are approaching 1 million visitors. It's
That's
amazing.
incredible. Absolutely incredible. And who runs the volunteer side of it? Would that be you, Birgie?
No,
or
it's the refuge. We support the volunteer program, but the refuge runs the volunteers, which are nearly 370 volunteers.
It's
Really?
amazing.
370?
But they give free tours. So we had 25 people show up today for the plant and nature walk. And they go with volunteers, and it's free, and they go and have a wonderful opportunity to have guides and interpretation.
Do it without volunteers. That staff dwindling down. So there's so many volunteers that want to help out, and they can be ex-doctors or rocket scientists or teachers. There's people from all walks of life that come and give their time, and we maybe put them on the back of a mower and they mow, or they educate the public, or they greet people, or they sell T-shirts in the store.
I'm getting completely ahead of myself because I really wanted to ask you to tell us. We'll start off with the history, but before I forget,
jumped right in.
Before I forget, if you wanted to volunteer at the refuge, what would they do? What would somebody do if you wanted to volunteer?
So you could walk into the free Visitor and Education Center. It's open every day from 9 to 4, but I have a ranger, Jeff Combs. He's I shouldn't say just. He's the volunteer coordinator that coordinates the schedules and their skills and the trainings. So you could just walk in, and people email, they call, they stop in, any of those.
Perfect. And I'll definitely include all those email addresses and any contact information in the notes underneath this. But let's back up a little bit, because we did get a bit ahead of ourselves. Just tell me a little bit about how the refuge started. What was its history? Who's Ding Darling?
Yeah. Well, I'll jump right in. So we're actually about to celebrate our 75th of the refuge in 2020. So we're excited. We're starting to plan already for some big events. But in 1945, the refuge was established, and it was the Sanibel National Wildlife Refuge. Of course, the key person in all of that, there was a lot of key people, but Ding Darling himself. So Ding Darling, it's J. Norwood Ding Darling. He was born in Norwood, Michigan, and spent most of his time in Des Moines, Iowa, at the register there. But he was a editorial cartoonist, and it was always political or conservation. He was drawing cartoons to get that message across. And I tell kids this like every day. They're like, he lived at a time where there was no TV. Like, kids can't even understand that. They don't even know what newspapers are anymore when you start talking about cartoons. But he just loved and had passion for this area. And he was a snowbird, and he had a house up off Captiva. But he has hands in everything, and he really worked hard to get this land set aside. He died in 1962, and they renamed the refuge in his honor in 1967.
And he saw what was happening all over the state of Florida and how land was just being gobbled up for development, and he didn't want that to happen to Sanibel. And so he worked with a team of people in saving that land and contacting the president and doing all sorts of things to protect that land that we now call J. and Ding Darling National
Which has been added to, am I correct?
Yes.
It has. It's been extra.
You can pat
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading
group
you,
on
Yeah,
it.
so
secured some
we've
land
added
and-
more land, and we hope to add more, but it's all contiguous to the refuge and connects to the refuge, whether it's through water or by physical land. But they call them, the wildlife corridors, so that animals have safe places to cross. And Sanibel's unique. I mean, I think if you add Ding Darling, which is the largest land mass, and correct me if I'm wrong, Toni, and then the city of Sanibel's property holdings and the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, I think it's nearly 70% of the entire island is conservation
really?
land.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah.
And with the refuge, we have how many thousands of acres?
So the Ding Darling's just over 6,400, but then we actually have 4 other refuges. If you're out on the boat, you may see our signage out there. There's many islands in Pine Island, Matlacha Pass,
Mostly water, accessible mangrove
and then
islands.
Rookery Island set aside for
Okay.
birds. So we have 4 other refuges, and so in all we
That are
we
not
act-
on the island.
Right, they're
Okay,
just-
so
you're
the
gonna be going
Rookery's in
with your
Tarpon
boat.
Bay.
Yeah.
Correct. And then you said you got some in Pine Island?
Yeah,
sorry?
Pine Island, Matlacha Pass. If you're crossing over 75, Caloosahatchee, we have some islands down there, and then way up in Island Bay in Boca Grande.
Okay.
So we actually manage 5 national wildlife refuges, and that could be doing bird surveys or prescribed fire. There's lots of management tools we use to manipulate them, but most people know Ding because you can come and have that great connection.
And just to be clear, it's not it's not a total access for everybody. The land is there for a reason, correct?
All closed to the public,
Yeah.
set aside for birds.
But they manage nearly 8,000 acres.
Yeah.
6,400 of which is
Ding.
right there at Ding Darling.
Okay.
And Wildlife Drive, and all of those are connected in that area.
So just in case you haven't been to the island, there is a what's called a wildlife drive, which is, how long is that, Toni?
It's 4 miles.
4 miles, and it's a trail that goes all the way back through, and it gives you complete access back into the refuge. And I must say, the first time I've visited Sanibel, which was in 1996, within the first 2 days of here, we went on bikes through the refuge. The most amazing experience. As a young budding photographer, I got the most amazing wildlife pictures I ever got, and it actually felt like cheating because I was walking so close to these animals that
It is pretty amazing, and it is a cool experience for
Yeah.
people who are not used to being surrounded by wildlife, because it is pretty accessible,
Yeah,
and
they
they're
start to
they're
tolerate.
comfortable
Yeah.
and tolerant of the public, but the public understands that they need to stay far away and
Yes,
give them
for
their
sure.
privacy, so to speak,
For
because we're
sure.
in the wildlife's backyard as well. But Toni worked really hard to add an additional interpretive exhibit along Indigo Trail, because Wildlife Drive itself is closed on Friday. The center is closed 7 days a week, The Wildlife Drive is closed on Friday. I mean, sorry.
Yeah, closed 7 days a week. It wouldn't be very interesting.
The center, the free education center is open 7 days a week.
Okay, gotcha.
And then Wildlife Drive is closed on Friday, but open every other day. But on that Friday, they can go to the center free of charge. Tons of things to do.
Yeah.
Our new learning lavatories, which I'm sure you have on your list of questions to ask. But now they've always had Indigo Trail, but I'll have Toni talk about the interpretive walk that we have there as well, which is great.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's other things to do on Friday, and actually it was the Friends group that stepped up, and we made this connection between the Sanibel School and the Refuge, so the students can walk and access onto this beautiful double-deckered pavilion. Well, what's great is, like Birgie mentioned, with the drive closed on Fridays, people need other things to do. They can get on the water with Tarpon Bay Explorers, they can hike, they can go to the Bailey Tract, but they can hike down the Indigo Trail, and we ended up putting some really fun exhibits. She's talking about our scat panels.
Okay, yeah.
Who doesn't like to talk about poop, right?
Exactly,
And see what animals have left behind. So that was something really fun. We worked with an artist. You know, everything we do is educational. We love to incorporate art because Ding was an artist. And so we worked with an artist. We worked on many projects, actually, and to create actually scat, which is, poop.
Yeah,
scat.
of course, yeah.
And so you can tell a lot about what's left behind, if they're healthy, what they're eating, and it's kind of just fun. And so there's these cool poop panels out there where people can learn about what's left behind on the trails.
How do you get to the Indigo Trail if you wanted to walk?
It's right from the visitor center, so you can't miss it. Right at the bottom of the ramp, it has a sign Indigo Trail. It's 2 miles out and 2 miles back.
Perfect. Okay,
crushed
so it's cool.
shell, you can bike it really well.
Okay.
So you can bike it or hike it, but it's only 0.3 of a mile, a little walk out there. We've got nesting birds right now, 3 different species within eye shot. If you want some good pictures of nesting birds, this is the time to be there. And the birds, like we said, they're right there.
Right.
And we watched the whole process, laying of the eggs, the fledging of the birds. It's unbelievable.
But we got to emphasize that it's not a zoo type scenario.
Yes.
When I was saying that the first time I went through there was the most incredible experience I've ever had in a while. It was like I was on a bike, I was stopping, and then I'd see something else. I'm like, oh, there's another thing, and there's another thing, and I kept going. But then the next time I came, and I had some family members came over from England. I'm like, we got to do it. We got to go. And we all went round there, and it was one of those days. So it's the real wildlife. It's not guaranteed. I mean,
correct.
So you're the experts in the field. When would you suggest?
And I think it's sometimes people don't have a choice, and it's that one day they have to go visit, but the first thing they should do is go up into the Visitor and Education Center and talk to the volunteers because they can help guide them, or take the nature tram tour where have naturalists. But I think letting them know it's not a zoo. We are in their backyard.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees what you might. So that's why every day is a new adventure, because you don't know what you're going to see. But working with the refuge,
low tide is the best time to come.
Low tide, okay.
Even on the small tiny island, the tide varies from the lighthouse to Tarpon Bay to the Wildlife Drive. So we have over the years figured out the best tides for the Wildlife Drive. So you're coming through on your bike or your car for the Wildlife Drive is actually the Cape Coral Bridge, Caloosahatchee River tide.
Oh, really?
And that's by the time it gets down into the mangroves and gets all the way back to the road, that's the most accurate.
Gotcha.
And then they can also call the main number at Ding Darling. There's a number they can push
Extension
to
2,
say what
24
tides.
hours, but to talk to someone. We have people you can talk to help plan your visit.
And I think, like Birgie said, I mean, if you do have to go there and it's the only day you go there, don't let it stop you because of the visitor
There
center.
is always something to see also. It's like, if it's your first time, you may not know to look for the little tiny mangrove tree crabs or the horseshoe crabs that might be in the water mating because it's just been a full moon, but you don't think of looking in the water. You're looking for the big animals or the big birds. But there's lots of really cool stuff if you know what to look for. And so oftentimes just going up to the education center, asking those questions, working with those wonderful volunteers and getting some information, finding out what people are seeing and doing it that way. And experiencing the visitor center, it's free, and there are things you can become junior rangers, you can do rubbings, you can do all sorts of things that can take hours of your time for nothing.
And then you've also got the superstars of the refuge that come. You know, you've got the annual visitors that come. You know, name a few of those. I mean, the migrating birds that you got.
yeah.
Right now, I mean, our
White
largest
pelicans
birds, the white pelican that's here. That's probably, and the roseate spoonbills, we have them
Right.
all year round, but
They're year round, are they?
they are year round.
They're more
The-
plentiful
Right
in the
now.
winter time
Okay,
and
gotcha.
The
now.
adults will leave and nest and breed in other locations. So we do have them in the summer, though. They're the juvenile ones.
Gotcha.
But this time of year, you know, you got to fight the snowbirds
Yeah.
with two legs, right? to get there for the other snowbirds. But the white pelican's probably right now the number one bird. It's our largest with a 9-foot wingspan.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And again, what's cool too is if you're driving along Wildlife Drive, if you don't have time to take the nature tram tour by Tarpon Bay Explorers, you can get in your car. It's $5 a car. It's very inexpensive for everybody in your car. It's just $5. Pull over anytime. But we also have volunteer rovers. They're set up there with their blue shirts
And they're very
their
keen,
big
and
cameras.
they're very
and-
knowledgeable.
Yeah,
And
they're wonderful.
Yeah, superb.
And
yeah.
so they have their, their scopes out, scoped on birds that people can look through, and they'll answer questions and different things like that also.
Fantastic. So what about So the I think you briefly touched on the hours. What are the hours of the refuge and the?
Yeah, so the
and
gate
visitor
times
center?
vary. It's on our website. Right now it's 7 to 7
Okay.
for this month. It does change a little bit with daylight savings and stuff. But the visitor center is standard, and that's 9 to 4 every day.
Okay.
then
And where are those times posted?
on our website.
And what is that the URL?
So it's www.fws.gov/ding-darling. And then
Perfect.
the Friends Group has a great website that has
And it's
recent
just
sightings,
dingdarlingsociety.org. And there are links to the refuge as well.
link back and forth.
Okay, perfect. And then how much is admission?
So it's free to the center, and
Okay.
then $5 for the wildlife
For the
drive.
okay,
A
perfect.
$1 for hiker or biker, and you just keep your receipt because you can come through as many times as you want during the day.
That same day.
That same day, right?
Got it.
People come in exercising, you know.
Oh, it's perfect,
We've
yeah.
got passes. If you live on the island, you can get a $12 pass. Even if you spend and want to go through Ding Darling a few times, a $12 annual pass pays for itself,
Wow.
depending on
Yeah.
how many times.
And
you
it's
can come through.
unlimited. And then there's also, if you're 62 and older, you can get the Golden Age Pass. That's now $80, but it's a lifetime $80. That's good for any federal public land. So
Parks,
anybody in your
refuges.
car
Wow.
is free. So
Wow.
if you have that pass, anybody in your car is free. So if it's at Yellowstone or here or somewhere else, if it's a federal land, it's good. So you can get that in the gift shop.
And what about? Tell me a little bit about isn't there? You can use the fishing license with the stamp. The
duck stamp, and that's
explain
what
that.
Ding Darling started so many years ago to preserve and protect thousands and thousands of acres. How many acres now have been protected nationwide?
Oh my gosh, 150 million acres.
Yeah, from the
it's-
duck stamp. And so that's good for
Really?
the year.
Okay.
And then they can use that also. And that's become a collector's item also for art collectors and different things like that. They collect the stamp, but it's mostly for hunters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the stamp, so every year they have a competition. Artists enter from all over the country.
Yeah.
All over the world, or
All over the country. I don't know if they've had them all over the world. I think it's all over the
it's
country.
mostly a country thing.
But they call it the $1 million prize because it's not necessarily a cash prize, but many of the artists in selling the artwork and having limited prints, and they have an agreement already set up with some companies to buy the original artwork and different things. They can make money on that artwork.
Gotcha.
And then that stamp is made to then sell every year. The Junior Duck Stamp contest started
Here
at
in
Ding
Sanibel.
Darling. It's now a national contest, and it started at
Fantastic.
Sanibel.
And I remember reading about the old tarpon fishing tournaments that used to happen here many years ago, and you see if you go into Usepa in the lodge there's pictures from these huge competitions that happened in the early in the 30s, 40s, and if I'm right in understanding, you've reintroduced a big tarpon tournament.
Yeah, so
Is
we
that right?
have a catch, care, and release tarpon tournament because the refuge was built on responsible hunting and fishing. And with fishing, tarpon fishing is a huge sport here in Southwest Florida and beyond. And it's a major sport fish. The first tarpon caught on rod and reel was caught in Tarpon Bay at Ding Darling. So we have a lot of history. And that was in the 1800s,
Yes.
1870s,
Wow,
I
okay,
think.
yeah.
And so built on that history of catching that first tarpon on rod and reel in Ding Darling, what wasn't then Ding Darling, but we then built upon that and work with the local restaurant, Doc Ford's, in sponsoring this tarpon tournament. But it's a catch, care, and release where we have rules and guidelines for the health of the fish also. The fun of the sport,
Right.
but also teaching the anglers good sportsmanship and good, the guidelines and the rules that they need to follow and being good to the fish also.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a win-win, I think. I think
Yeah,
it's great for
absolutely.
the tourism industry, and it's
Yeah.
great for, publicity and all
Absolutely,
the rest of
yeah.
it. So, yeah, hat goes off to you for that one. So there's a lot of free programs that you do within the park, and can you mention a couple of them?
Yeah, so the Refuge, we have just over 25 free programs every week, and that's January through April. I mean, that's our big push for tourism, but we're finding there's really not a downtime in tourism here on the island. It's really busy even in the summer for us. And so we continue those programs, a select number of our really good programs throughout the summer where we can bring, kids can keep on learning and families can keep on. They can handle the heat. They can
Right.
handle a hike out at
Right.
Ding Darling. We're going to try to get them out on the beach, and so it's kind of exciting. But we do that with our volunteers and the little bit of the staff that we have. It's really important that we continue our programming throughout the year. We host Ding Darling Days in October. We're really excited about that. We talked about the federal duck stamp artist and the junior. They come. You can meet them. So we have special events, Earth Days coming up, and on and on. We're usually doing something fun out at the Refuge.
But we always tell people for families, it's a great, yes, it costs $6 to cross the bridge. But when you come to Ding Darling, really the only cost is maybe the tram rides, which are so much per person. And it's very reasonable when you get an amazing tour with really well-educated naturalists on board. But if they just have very little money, they can spend $5 for a carload of a family.
Right.
And they can spend more than a day for $5 at Ding Darling.
Yeah, it's
From all of the
fantastic.
programs inside, outside, the hikes, and then taking the car through. You can borrow binoculars. You have maps. You have free brochures. You have free coloring books and all
Right.
sorts of things for the kids and the families. That it's a bargain.
And great rainy day entertainment, too.
Absolutely.
If it's raining
We
outdoor,
are busy
indoors.
on rainy
Yeah,
days.
and a
You're
great,
right.
and we have one of the best nature wildlife stores. It's a refuge store where all the
Yeah.
proceeds benefit the refuge.
Yeah.
Superb.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, Toni, I understand you jokingly call Birgie Red Bull.
Yeah, I can't say I
I've never
coined
drank
it.
the stuff.
Yeah, she doesn't have to drink it. She's just dynamic. I can't take that I actually coined it, but we do call her that. Yes.
Okay, so tell me about her crowning achievement.
Listen, there's been way too many things this woman has done. She
Well.
keeps us busy. We're able to be creative.
Well, there's
What do you think?
a silly list called Birgie's Big Idea List,
Okay.
where many of them
Scary.
stay on that big idea
Okay,
list and
got
never
it,
go
got it, got it.
forward. And oftentimes people will roll their eyes and say, oh, yeah, whatever. Well, they did that about 7 years ago
Yes.
when I said, I really think cool bathrooms are the way to go. And have you ever been to
There we
X
go.
and X? And they'd laugh and roll. Well, we finally received a grant from the West Coast Inland Navigation District, and then Toni and the whole refuge got behind it because really anybody who comes to the refuge, whether you've just driven a short distance or, everyone says, if we're going to go on the drive, let's go to the bathroom. We always remember that when our parents went
Okay,
with
the
us.
first question is, where's an alligator? The second is, where's the bathroom?
Okay, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
In which one could
So, and sometimes that changes.
So
yeah,
we have the world's
order.
best bathrooms now. So
Yes.
definitely that has to be a visit. And a lot of it is testament to the entire team of the refuge and the society. We're going to be entering the nation's best bathroom contest.
We're gonna
Sweet.
need your help.
yeah.
Everyone's help.
So
Okay,
if
perfect.
people just want to go see a cool bathroom, then they're
Yeah.
going to want to stay at Ding Darling because they see so much in there that they want to go, I want to go out on the drive and see that.
There
or I
you
want to
go.
go inside and see more.
Educational bathrooms.
Yeah, so
Whatever
just-
next.
Listen, we had a captive audience for over 90 seconds, and we continue to educate them.
Yeah.
in the bathrooms.
So where can people find out about fundraising and all the rest of it, Birgie? Like if they wanted to get involved with fundraising.
Oh,
or-
absolutely. Well, they can call the number or check our website, dingdarlingsociety.org.
Okay.
But also inside the visitor center, there's, little jars that people can make gifts or they can become members. Members get a discount in the store. So oftentimes people will, buy T-shirts and hats and they'll say, oh my God, I love the refuge. I'd love to become, they can become a member and get 10% off. And then they can just ask at the refuge too, and they'll call us and say, hey, come upstairs and all of that.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit about the Ding Darling Theodore Cross High School photo contest.
Yeah, he was an amazing person that was not just known for his photography. That's what he did later in life, and what he became known for. He was civil rights attorney and marched with Martin Luther King, but he had a home here on Sanibel and fell in love with the wildlife and photography, and developed some beautiful books and all of that. And his family set this scholarship, not a scholarship, the photo contest up to encourage high schoolers to get outside in their backyards, in their schools, anywhere to notice nature. And so that contest is taken anywhere in the Lee County and Collier County areas, and they can enter online, and it's free to enter. And their prizes are pretty big. And it's an opportunity just, again, to introduce wildlife and the outdoors to people of all ages. But so oftentimes it's difficult to get to Sanibel and Ding Darling. We want people to see how easy it is to notice wildlife in their backyards.
That's awesome.
And it's a great contest.
I think the first ever picture that actually one of the pictures that got me into photography was this guy that he set a camera in a trash can and laid it down, and this fox came in, and he somehow had a flash that went off, and it was like just a light bulb moment for me, like, wow, how cool that was.
And that's what's so amazing about Toni and the Refuge, the light bulb moments when you see that with the kids, whether it's through photography or the learning lavatories in the bathrooms, or going on a tour with the teachers and seeing the mangrove tree crab. You see these little light bulbs or an aha moment, and you think, okay, that's why we do what we do. You don't know what's going to turn someone on to wanting to protect wildlife in the outdoors. And if it is just that one moment, they might then become our next conservation stewards. And that's what the Refuge does so well.
That's awesome. Hey, I do have a question here. Laurie, my wife's father, is a history teacher. He's been a biology teacher for his whole career. And I asked him if I know he's very excited about you guys coming in, so I asked him if he had any questions. He said, do you have any outreach programs for students that involve their hands-on working in the park on maintenance projects?
Interesting. So we have had special groups come in, exotic plant removals. I mean, this is, dirty, hot work. You're going to have to tell them, right? We don't use chemicals. We use our hands. Yeah. So, you'd be surprised when we go out there, people are like, we want to come out as a family and we want to clean up. And they come out and we're like, there's no trash out here. People really respecting Darling. That's so awesome, we don't have those kind of problems, but there's a lot of problems with exotic weeds and plants and things. So there's been those opportunities where we've had groups come out and we teach them a few things and they get to experience, and we get them dirty and hot and sweaty.
He'll be very pleased to know about that, because he actually came across a similar group in a national park and he stopped to talk to them. Yeah. And he's like, this would be so cool if it was somewhere in Sanibel where they can actually get dirty. And
they can. And the other thing they just had is the AmeriCorps came. A group from AmeriCorps and spent a solid, 2 weeks helping?
6 weeks.
Oh, what's AmeriCorps?
AmeriCorps is like the Peace Corps. A lot of people know Peace Corps, but AmeriCorps, they stay in the United States and they work on projects.
Gotcha.
So after the hurricane, we had some problems with the boardwalk, the Calusa Shell Mound Trail at the end of the Wildlife Drive. And we needed it, structurally sound, obviously. And so they came out and worked with our archaeologists from the regional office, had to come down. These are Indian mounds left, if you haven't been out to see that part of the refuge. They're left intact. So he came down and made sure that everything happened the right way, but we had to support the boardwalk again since the hurricane. Right. So that group came out, lived on site, and they're all, one was a high school graduate, some are still in college, some are college graduates, getting experience traveling around on these working
And we
crews.
always incorporate the educational component for them as well. So they're doing hard work, but then they came in for our lecture series and they came in for our film series and different things so that they were learning as
so
well
you're
as
immersed in the whole experience. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Fantastic. That's great. And then tell me a little bit about the ethical wildlife viewing. That's something that...
Yeah, that's something that we can't say enough, and people can't help us, get that message out there. And we love photographers and everybody to come out and have an opportunity, but to keep a safe distance. Just so people understand, you're getting too close when you change the behavior of that wildlife. It could be, it could be your safety when it comes to an alligator or something, obviously. But even the birds and the little shorebirds and the tree crabs and everything else, when you change an animal's behavior, you've gotten too close.
Where they skitter away.
They stop
eating. They hide in their hole. Or
they stop eating. They look at you. it's having, we
They're
tell the
scared.
kids, it's having its breakfast or its lunch.
Right.
What if I took it away from you, So that change in behavior should be that time, I'm getting too close. I need to back off.
And that goes for whether you're on the wildlife drive or not.
Yes.
I
Goes
mean, even
everywhere.
just go around and don't.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
everybody wants to get that really cool shot, but it's also understanding and appreciating that it's their land too, and they need their privacy.
And they do make long lenses. I do know
And
that
they
much.
do
Yes.
make long lenses.
Sure.
And sometimes it's just getting that memory in your mind and remembering that if you don't, have a really long lens and you can't get close enough, that's okay. Come back another time when
Yeah.
you can, but just remember that memory, and that's sometimes all that's necessary. But you do see it oftentimes at Ding Darling on the beaches, chasing wildlife, and they think it's fun and they see them fly. It's very stressful. And so education is a big part of it as well, because this is their land also. So we're trying to let people understand that we're all sharing it.
Yeah. Okay, well, fantastic. I know this week we've got another type of visitor on the politician front with Mr. Pence here. So he's sort of messed up the traffic on the island.
Yeah.
I know
A little bit.
we got to wrap things up a little bit, but last couple of questions. A couple of things to do. Now, obviously, you guys are going to say Ding Darling Wildlife Refuge. But if your favourite things to do on Sanibel, Birgie, let's start with you first. Anything Sanibel Captiva, other than the refuge, anything that you'd recommend visitors to do that they wouldn't necessarily know about?
I say take advantage of the bike paths. I mean, those bike paths are wonderful. And, I used to tell my nephews when they'd come and visit, we'd go have an ice cream tasting, kind of where we'd go to 5 different places and get vanilla ice cream at each location. And then we'd have
Hold on, I've got to stop you there. Laurie has just put together a whole list of every single ice cream store on the island.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
I
and
was
then
thinking,
we'd have
get ice cream at Pinocchio.
Right, and then we'd have, little
That is
rating
great.
sheets,
Yeah.
and all of that. And then along the way, stop at all the different places. There's the Bailey Trek, then there's Ding Darling. And ice cream's not near there, but it's a nice break to get ice cream and then drive a little farther. And ways to cool off when you're on a long bike ride. There are so many things that you can stop and do and see and taste to give a break in between heading to Ding Darling or wherever. But the bike paths, I think, are by far the best way to experience the islands.
Yeah, I want to go out on a limb, and there's hundreds of miles, isn't there?
There's 23, I think, is between Sanibel and Captiva.
23 miles?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a
of
little
shared
off
use
there.
paths.
It may feel like
miles. Yeah,
I
hundreds of miles.
I thought it was. Yeah, the island's
but
only
you keep
20
going
miles long.
around and around,
But if you go backwards and forwards and keep going, it's hundreds of miles.
and it may feel like it. I'm telling you, there are times
so
where it does. When
funny.
that wind's against your back, that's when you do need to stop for some ice cream or soda or
Exactly.
something else. But
If you follow my routes, then you'll definitely need ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay, so Toni, what do you think?
Well, and you said you couldn't say anything about Ding Darling, but even before she said biking, I think kayaking. I mean, I don't think
yeah.
people get to experience it by the water, and you have to take the time to do it. And because it's a whole different experience. You can be feeling like you are in the middle of wilderness out there. And so to leave your phones behind, I know we're all connected to all of this. And she mentioned it earlier, and to just take those images with your mind, to spend quality time with someone you love. But on the water is, I think, the best way.
And it's easy. I mean,
Yeah.
you can do it along the drive of
Yeah,
wildlife
you can
driving,
launch.
but you can
Yeah.
do it at the causeway,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
launch your kayak. It doesn't have to
Right.
be at official kayak locations. I mean, there's
Yeah.
lots of areas you can launch and have some fun in a kayak. It's great.
There was Bird West, who unfortunately passed away,
Yes.
was did kayak canoe tours and everything. And there's
Yeah.
plenty of places. We had Wendy from Tarpon Bay Explorers here last week. They rent kayaks and canoes, and I think there's a few others, isn't there?
yeah.
That
Yeah.
there's other places
There
that
are
you can
other
get
ones.
them. So it's easily accessible and definitely something worth doing
Yeah.
for sure.
But definitely the kayak trail through Tarpon Bay is one of the best because it's
Can't
just
get lost.
good. Can't get lost, and it's great. So it's a good first experience.
That's we have to do that, Laurie. We've lived
Yeah.
here
Oh, you
for 20
absolutely
years
do.
and never done it. So.
Yeah,
Oh my
it's-
gosh, it's
worth
great back there.
And we have kayaks at the house, so
Wow,
Oh
there you
my
go.
goodness.
unexcusable. Okay, that's perfect. So you do have a live cam, don't you? Do you have a live cam over there?
We do.
Where is that? Where does that face? What's it looking at? On
So it's 2 miles out at the tower. Is
Okay.
where
Wildlife
the cameras.
Drive.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we can zoom in and out, turn it all around.
And people can check it on our website as
Yeah.
well. So on the
Okay,
Refuge
perfect.
website, it's also on the Chamber of Commerce's website for Sanibel and Captiva. as an area that they can click on, and then the Ding Darling Society. You can look at the camera there.
Perfect. Just a couple of last thing I want to ask you. Just important dates, like when's the tarpon fishing? When is the Ding Darling Days? When just hit me with a few dates.
So tarpon tournament is May 10th and 11th. The tournament's the actual 11th. It's sold out in 2 hours. We keep the number lower because it's good for the fish. So there's only 55 teams in the tournament, but it is on May 11th, and we raise, over $100,000, but we give away 100% of the entry fees to the anglers. Okay. So they come away with some great prizes as well, so it's a win-win.
I was talking to Dan James, who's a local rod maker here in Fort Myers, and we were talking about the tournament.
Yeah.
And I think they've actually got a couple of British teams in there,
Yes,
haven't
we
they?
do.
Yes.
We have an international team coming in from
So they got
Britain,
international
and also,
competition.
they do. And they actually, when they came 2 years ago, they won 5th place. So they're, all gung-ho to be number 1 this time.
Wow, fantastic.
But Ding Darling Days is really the one that's most open to everybody, and it's free, and it's
We go.
It's
we,
great.
we've,
and
we've
that's
been a few
October.
times,
It's in October to honor Ding Darling's birthday and also National Wildlife Refuge Week, but it's October 12th, 13th, and 14th this year.
Should definitely go. It's great for the kids. There's
It's
plenty of
fabulous.
activities going on,
Yep.
all sorts of entertainment. You get really up close and personal with some different wildlife and things like that. So it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days to come here. I do have one last thing I want to see if you could do. Because you girls have been here on the island for a long time.
Yes, we have.
And you know what this is?
Yes, I do.
Can you pass that on to Terry?
I don't.
Tony, please.
I've never.
Well, look, I'll do it with you first.
Okay.
Because you must be able to do it because you are.
I don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so all you got to do over this end here.
I can't
You
believe
go.
I have to do this. Is this?
Birgie, you're gonna help. You're gonna show her because I'm sure you're
I've
gonna
never
be an
done
absolute
this
pro.
before.
So all you gotta do is you put your mouth up to it.
Over around this?
Yeah, so put it around because you're gonna change your notes as you do it.
This is crazy.
There
He's
you go.
gonna be
I
kidding
think you
me.
need to do that to
You
show
better
Tony.
show
I'll
us.
watch. I love to see you.
All right, ready? We'll do it together.
So put your
No,
hand in
he
it.
is doing this. I am not going to be fooled.
Here we go.
It's
Ready?
true. Go.
You can't go until you get one note out of it. Come on, just one note. Go on, one more. One more. She's got it.
Put your hand in there.
No,
You just
this
go-
is
go-
not going to work.
It's
You
got.
have
Go on,
to.
Birgie. Go on,
Birgie,
Birgie. Go on. You can do it.
see,
You can do
I
it. It's
bet
been sanitized and everything. Go. That's all. Excellent. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate you coming in. It's been fantastic to meet you.
Hey,
Great
thanks.
to see you
It was
again.
fun.
Thank you for
Awesome.
everything.
Thanks very much. Till next time. Thanks for listening to the Insider's Guide to the Islands. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.